OK, brace yourself. So today saw the government's Rwanda Bill faced its first of several key tests in the House of Lords. And it went just about as well as you'd expect. Our country's lords and barons of great virtue told us that Rwanda, in their view, isn't safe, why they know better, and why we should just allow illegal migrants onto our shores without any deterrent whatsoever. Where better to start than the Archbishop of Woke, Justin Welby?
It is damaging for asylum seekers in need of protection and safe and legal routes to be heard. It is damaging for this country's reputation, which it contradicts even as late as last week, where the Prime Minister himself spoke eloquently on the value and importance of international law for this country.
But Welby was positively tame compared to Labour member and human rights lawyer Baroness Helena Kennedy, KC. Now, I interviewed Baroness Kennedy earlier this evening. It was supposed to just be a bit of a back and forth, and we were going to play a couple of clips out of it now, really. But that was only after she'd said her piece in the unelected upper chamber.
It contravenes international law. It contravenes our own laws. It is unworkable. It is unaffordable, and in my view, it is immoral because it involves taking incredible risks with human life. We should think again. But let's be clear, the purpose in this. This is because we have an election coming up and the government wants to run up the flag, the old subject of immigration, and to put people in fear of what that might mean.
OK, so just moments later, I got the opportunity to probe Baroness Kennedy on some of her claims. And let's put it this way, she didn't like being questioned. I started by asking her if the Lords is out of touch, given that almost half of Brits said they support the Rwanda Bill, while 35% said they did not.
When you say that the majority of the general public are in favour of the Rwanda deal, I think the general public, by and large, want to see the crossings stopped, and they want to see the exploitation of people by traffickers stopped. And I think that there are ways that you can do that don't involve sending people off to Rwanda. And so the majority of the speeches in the House of Lords tonight were to say this was hugely expensive, and I think the general public should be told just how much it's costing to take very few people to Rwanda. That in Rwanda that they might be in a lot of danger because Rwanda is not a very safe place, and just calling it safe doesn't make it safe. And the other thing is that there's a reciprocal arrangement, and nobody talks about this, which is that we're going to accept people that Rwanda want to send to us because they're vulnerable asylum seekers from perhaps the Congo and places that have gone where people have fled to Rwanda, and they want to send them here. And I hope that the general public know that, especially GB listeners, because I don't think you're busy telling them.
On this massive, massive issue, which clearly we cannot get right at the moment, ping-pong in the House of Lords, the public just wants it sorted, OK? Why would you be opposed to a referendum? Is it because you think you would lose?
No, I don't think that we would lose at all if there was a proper discussion and debate and all the facts were given to the general public. I don't believe that the general public are being well informed on this. I think that this is a flag that is being run up the flagpole based on a deception of the general public, because they're being told that this is a way of dealing with the problem. It's only going to mean a very small number of people will be sent to Rwanda. They're talking about a couple of hundred people. In the scheme of things, that's nothing. And it's costing us £400 million. When people are living in facing hardship every day in this country, £400 million into the pocket of Kagame, who runs a very authoritarian regime in Africa. And do you think the people of Africa are going to benefit from that money? I don't suspect so. Okay. So, I mean, let's get the facts right. And we're going to be receiving their asylum seekers who have got problems, and it's because we've got a health system that can deal with them and a mental health system that can deal with them, and they don't have any psychiatrists or psychologists, and they don't have anybody to help people who've got psychological problems. As a country that had genocide 30 years ago, and where a quarter of the population has mental health problems.
OK, yeah, no, fair points, but do you think the Rwanda plan shames us all? Do you not think it's shameful that we spend £8 million a day on housing illegal immigrants? People don't now feel safe in their communities because of things like migrant hotels and housing.
But you're saying illegal immigrants. You're saying they're people applying for asylum.
Okay.
You're making a judgment already. You're basing a judgment already.
I am, yes. No, I am. And I'm not making any bones about that. I don't mind you saying that because that is exactly what I'm doing, all right? So people who have entered Britain illegally in accordance with the illegal migration bill, and people are now using up housing stock for some of these people. Do you not think that shames Britain, or do you not care?
No, I don't think it shames Britain. I think it's actually one of the things that is a great value about Britain.
That a young single mum who's fleeing domestic violence can't get a flat because somebody who's just arrived here can. You think that's something that you value about Britain?
I think that Britain is a country that is trying to solve its social problems. And there are many, and I have argued for domestic violence, people fleeing them to be given accommodation, of course. But you're really not arguing this fairly. You know that. You're being controversial just for the sake of it.
I'm not being controversial just for the sake of it. I am, with respect, I think I'm holding a mirror up to the population more than you are.
Stop it. Just stop it and listen. There are people who are fleeing Syrians. Syria has the worst reputation for torture of probably most countries. There are people who are fleeing Afghanistan who basically worked for the British Army but who couldn't get out in the evacuations, and we have left them stranded. And so they're the people, and often they're joining members of their family here. They're clever, smart people, and we have a shortage of certain kinds of skills. So, in fact, these people want to work. So most immigrants who've come to this country have added to the value of this country.
What evidence do you have that of the people who've come to Britain across the Channel so far, any of them have been a net benefit economically to this country?
Well, they're not allowed to work. We've made a rule in Britain to say that asylum seekers are not permitted to work. And many of them become depressed because of that, because they want to work and make a contribution. They want to be able to pay rent and to be able to find...
What evidence is there? Seriously, what evidence is there to suggest that if we allowed them to work, they would go on to be a net benefit? Because I interviewed the former Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, who has said to me on record that there are people who, by the way, include murderers and rapists who come across the Channel, who he thinks the vast majority of them, A, can't speak English, and B, will never be a net benefit economically to this country. So what evidence do you have that contradicts a guy who's seen the data from inside the Home Office, with respect?
People like you said exactly the same thing about the many Jews who came to this country in the 30s fleeing persecution.
What do you mean by that?
And they have added hugely to the benefit of this country.
Excuse me,
don't tell me.
That's an absolutely outrageous accusation that you say people like me have said that Jews fleeing the Holocaust were in the same
You've not said it about
issue as people coming over this country.
You're saying it about people.
I've quoted you, our former immigration minister. No, I have quoted to you that our former immigration minister has done an interview with me during which he has said that people who are rapists, murderers and terrorists have come across the Channel and we were unable to deport them. And now you're telling me that I would have said the same thing about Jews fleeing the Holocaust. That's outrageous.
Many people were absolutely hostile to the arrival of Jews in the 30s, and they have benefited this country. You asked me for evidence that I could give you that immigrants coming to a country
to say that I wouldn't have allowed Jews to flee the Holocaust.
That is not what I said to you, and you're twisting my words. So there's no point in having a debate with someone like you if you don't listen to what someone's saying. Think of all of the people who are in our cabinet whose parents came as immigrants to this country. So many people come to this country and contribute hugely, and when they arrive here, they often don't speak English very well at all. So please don't say that. My mother-in-law
You're not talking about legal immigration, though, and that's different, isn't it? Legal immigration we're talking about. And actually, we are worse off GDP per capita. We are not doing better GDP per capita, and you must know that.
Sorry, I've got to go back into the chamber, and I really find that you're not someone who debates in a fair way, and you should do. It's disgraceful. You're not an interviewer that I respect, and I'm going to close this down now.
It's worth noting that Baroness Kennedy appears to be running a charity that helps refugees bring their relatives over to this country. She was asked a very basic question about whether people who come across the Channel will ever be a net benefit to this country financially, and she proceeded to compare me to a Nazi sympathiser. I think that says a heck of a lot about the state of debate by our unelected peers in the House of Lords right now. She also said that she didn't want the public to have a vote on it, which is interesting because she sits in a chamber, of course, that is unelected. I'm very, very sorry, but I think the things that she said there were absolutely vile. Her arrogance speaks volumes, and the idea that somebody like that should be having a say over our borders, or indeed anything in this country, I think tells you a heck of a lot about the entitlement and the attitude of some people that you pay out of your pocket to help run this country. She is, in my view, an absolute disgrace. The Safety of Rwanda Bill, though, has cleared its first major hurdle in the House of Lords now, after peers voted 206 to 84, a majority of 122 against a motion designed to block it. Joining me to react to that interview there is my panel, and tonight I am, of course, joined by top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone. We have journalist and commentator Mike Buckley and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. Carol, what we saw there was a Labour peer denying evidence, refusing to answer basic questions, calling me a Nazi and then leaving.
You kind of summed it up there. There's not much left to say. You know, I suppose what got me was she's patronising. You know, she said she was trying to suggest that the British people think the way they do about immigration because they're not well informed. The implication being they're too stupid to understand what's in the papers, what they say on the news, too stupid to do their own kind of research, to look into what's happening. It's just outrageous that she suggests, like, she knows and we don't. I mean, I've never heard such kind of privilege in my life. And you were right to pull her up on comparing what's happening now with what happened after the Holocaust.
She said, to be clear, she said people like you said this like about the Jews during World War II in the 1930s. Mike, look, you're a Labour man. How do you feel about her there, saying that?
I mean, I think you're entirely misrepresenting her. I thought she was perfectly reasonable.
Do you think?
To be honest.
Calling me a Nazi, basically.
I don't think she was calling you a Nazi. You asked her, please demonstrate how migrants have contributed to the economy of this country.
Yeah.
She said, well, look at the Jews coming across in the 30s. They've contributed immeasurably to our society. And indeed, she also
said people like you would have said the same about the Jews.
Similarly, well, maybe that was slightly insulting towards you. I mean, it's not for me to apologise for Helena Kennedy. I've never met Helena Kennedy. But she was, just as you're opposing people coming across the Channel now to seek asylum in the UK, she was saying there were people then opposing Jews coming to this
those
country.
people were fleeing.
Indeed, of course.
Those people were fleeing Nazi Germany.
And B, have contributed massively to our society since. And she gave a second example.
You mean
the parents of many members of the cabinet who have also contributed.
But she then dodged the question there, didn't she? Because that's legal immigration. That's not illegal immigration. And at the point where I said to her...
It is not illegal, and I keep making this point, it's not illegal to come to the UK to claim asylum.
I don't care about that. If you break into a country...
Well, you're just telling me something's legal that is not illegal.
The illegal migration bill.
That is the key point that is
the illegal migration bill.
She is trying to say that every single person coming across on those boats is
an engineer, a neurosurgeon, all of this stuff.
We know that 70% of the people on those boats are economic migrants, and we see young men between 18
that is completely
and 30.
not true.
It is completely.
We have a Home Office that is, as we all know, not majorly invested in giving these people asylum. They did something that 84% of them are genuine asylum seekers, which means
that's because they have no bar, no standard for who an asylum seeker is. That's why we accept 3 times more than France.
And the developed over many years.
The system.
We've had a government since 2010 that wanted to exclude as many people as possible. But even under this current government, they still give 84% of them asylum.
Let Belinda talk.
The case law in this country is so lax when it comes to who gets granted asylum compared to many other European countries. So when it is absolutely true, our case law is so weak, we allow pretty much anyone in, and anyone we reject, we can't deport anyway. This blind, virtue-signalling, self-righteous, bleeding heart liberal claptrap believing just because you're an asylum seeker, that makes you a good person. The Parsons Green bomber, the maternity hospital bomber, the man that killed 3 gay men men in Reading, all asylum seekers. I'm not saying they're all like that, but the fact is we do not know. They are not documented. So preaching and patronising us to presume they're all doctors and nurses wanting to give us goodness and their work and time and energy. No, it's a burden to the taxpayer. It's putting our lives at risk, and they're putting bad, dangerous international law in front of public safety. It's outrageous and despicable.
OK, all right. Now, look, well, we obviously could have carried this on for a heck of a long time. My view is this. I do think that perhaps somebody, if they are helping to run a charity that helps, quotes-unquote, refugees bring family members over to the UK, maybe has somewhat of a conflict of interest when it comes to voting on a bill that might toughen that up.